pumpkin juice. I screamed when I pulled open the kitchen door. A lime green creature stood on the back porch. A springy antenna sprouted from its head and wobbled in the wind. A third eyeball peered at me from above its nose. A red eyeball. "I come from outer space," it muttered to my cat, Scout. "What kind of furry creature are you?" Scout stared at it. Then she began to purr. She twitched her tail and strolled outside. "You can't fool her, Frank," I told the space creature. "She knows your voice." Frank is my best friend, and tonight was Halloween. Soon we would go trick-or-treating together, as we always do. Frank picked up a fat orange pumpkin and stepped into the kitchen. "What's the pumpkin for?" I asked. "We're going to make something." Frank set the pumpkin on the table. He pulled a booklet from his costume pocket. "Check this out, Charlie." I took the booklet. The words were all faded, but I think the title was Monster Brews to Bring Out the Best in You on Halloween. "Hey, cool, but what exactly is in these brews?" I asked. "Chicken hearts and bat wings?" "Read page 6, Frank told me. Pumpkin Juice Supreme. I flipped the pages and found the recipe for Pumpkin Juice Supreme. The flesh of a ripe pumpkin, I read. Milk, molasses, butter, garlic, and chicken broth. "See," Frank said, "no rat's tails, just regular stuff." He took out a carving knife and stabbed it into the pumpkin. "Let's make some." A mix of pumpkin and garlic and chicken broth sounded pretty disgusting to me, but I gathered up the other ingredients while Frank chopped up the pumpkin. By the time we finished getting everything ready, the kitchen was a disaster area. Molasses oozed down the counters, garlic skin floated in puddles of chicken broth, and pumpkin slop was everywhere. "Okay, we're ready," Frank announced. He checked the booklet. 2 cups of pumpkin guts. I scooped up some guts in my hands. The slimy stuff slithered through my fingers and dripped down my wrists. "This is really gross," I declared. "Yeah, but we can't quit now." Frank tossed another glop of guts into the blender. Then we added the other stuff. Frank stuck the lid on the blender and stabbed the button. The blender roared. The pumpkin mix whirled faster and faster. He stopped the blender and took the lid off. I stared at the slimy, yellow-orange slop inside. My stomach heaved. "This was your idea, Frank," I told him. "You drink it first. Just don't puke all over the floor." Frank poured the mixture into 2 glasses. "Here goes nothing." He picked up a glass, tipped his head back, and drank. "Well?" I asked. Not bad," he told me, licking his lips. He gulped down the rest of it. "Actually, it tastes good. Your turn, Charlie." I took a deep breath and held it. As I tilted my glass, the thick slop slithered toward my lips. I closed my eyes and forced myself to take a sip. Then I took another sip and another. Frank was right. The stuff actually tasted good, sort of like sweet soup. Very thick. Must be the molasses, I thought. After I finished, we each drank another glass. Then we stared at each other. A minute went by. "Feel like it's bringing out the best in you?" I asked. "No, but I sure like the taste." "Let's go trick-or-treating," I said. "It's Halloween, remember?" I threw my vampire cape around my shoulders and pulled him out of the door. Outside, a full moon hung in the sky. Kids dressed as ghosts and skeletons and werewolves crowded the sidewalks. At the first house, the Tylers gave us 3 bite-sized candy bars apiece. I felt hungry, so I ate one as we walked to the next house. We got more mini candy bars there. I still felt hungry. I ate a bite-sized Butterfinger, then a Baby Ruth. "Feed me," my stomach seemed to cry. "More!" Before I even finished the first Baby Ruth, I took another one from my bag and shoved it into my mouth. "Weird," I mumbled as I chewed. "I can't get enough to eat." "Me either." Frank's mouth was dripping with chocolate and caramel too. Let's hurry and get some more." The Munson twins, Sally and Cindy, opened the door of the next house. Mrs. Munson stood behind them, holding a tray of candy bars. Full-sized candy bars, Snickers and Milky Ways. "Trick or treat," I growled in my vampire voice. My stomach growled too. My mouth watered. A string of saliva dribbled over my lips. I wasn't hungry. I was starving. The saliva dripped onto my chin. I tried to suck it up. "Trick or treat," I growled again. Cindy dropped a candy bar into our bags. Frank stared into his bag. "One," he grumbled. "Is this all I get? Just one?" Mrs. Munson frowned. "That's how we do things, Mr. Spaceman. Don't be greedy." She started to close the door, but Frank shoved it open. Then he scooped about 10 candy bars from the tray and ran back down the steps. The twins screamed in disbelief. Their mum shouted angrily. I turned and chased after Frank. "Give me some of those," I shouted. I didn't care that he'd stolen the candy. My stomach felt so empty, so hungry. All I wanted was food. "Get your own, Charlie," Frank snarled. He started to rip open a Three Musketeers. My stomach screamed at me to eat. I snatched the candy bar from Frank's hand. As I raced away from him, I shoved the candy bar into my mouth, paper and all. I couldn't chew fast enough. Chocolate oozed out of my mouth. A big gob of it slid down my chin and plopped onto the sidewalk. I picked it up with my fingers and licked it off as I kept running. "You just stole a candy bar from your best friend," I told myself. "You just ate the paper and chewed up goo from the grimy sidewalk. What's the matter with you?" I didn't know. And I didn't care. My stomach wouldn't let me care. It wouldn't let me think about anything but food. I hurried to the next block and pounded on the door of the first house I came to. A little boy opened it. He held a basket of lollipops. "Lollipops," I cried. "That's not enough. You have to have something better than that." Before he could stop me, I shoved my way into the house. I heard him yell, but I kept going down a hallway and into the kitchen. I yanked open the refrigerator. Eggs. Raw eggs. I cracked one open and gulped it down. The thick, gooey white spilled down my chin. I licked it off and reached for another egg. Then I spotted a plate of greasy liver and onions. "Yes!" my stomach screamed. "Meat!" As I reached for the liver, I saw something strange. Thick black hair had sprouted on the back of my hand. I checked my other hand. More hair. I felt my face. Thick, scratchy hairs covered my cheeks and chin, even my forehead. But I couldn't stop to think. I had to eat. I snatched up some liver and shoveled it in. "Who do you think you are, you little beast?" a voice shrieked at me. I dropped the liver and spun around. The little boy and his mum stood in the doorway. She held a broom in her hands. "Get out of my kitchen this instant," she screamed. She raised the broom and swung it at me. I ducked. Before she could swing again, I grabbed another handful of liver and ran out of the house. Beast. She had called me a beast, and she was right. The pumpkin juice, I thought as I gobbled down the liver. That's what did it. The booklet of Monster Brews didn't promise to bring out the best in me. It promised to bring out the beast in me, and it worked. I knew I had to do something, but I couldn't think about anything but food. As I dashed across the yard, I tripped on a rock. Splat! I sprawled into the grass face first. I started to climb up and saw a long, fat worm inching its way along the ground. A thick, slimy, juicy worm. Better than candy, better than liver. I lowered my face to the ground, stuck out my lips, and sucked the worm out of the grass in one big slurp. "Oh, gross," someone cried. "Did you see that?" I glanced up. 4 kids stood a few feet away, watching me. When they saw my face, they screamed and ran off. My face, I thought, I felt it again. The hair had grown longer, much longer. My hands and arms were covered with it. No, I cried. I leaped up and began to run, but I didn't know where to go or what to do. I was a beast. The more I ate, the hairier I got, and the more food I needed. Eat, my stomach demanded. Eat! I ran down the street, and I snatched a candy bag away from a little boy dressed as a pirate. What I really wanted was another worm, but candy would have to do for now. I ran into a dark alley and turned the bag upside down. Candy and cookies and gum spilled out, and a popcorn ball. I reached for it, and whack! A hairy hand got to it first, but not my hairy hand. I glanced up. "Frank!" I cried. Thick bristles of hair covered his face and hands, just like mine. "You know what happened, don't you? It's the pumpkin juice. It turned us into beasts." "Yeah," he muttered. He gobbled down the popcorn ball and smacked his lips. "Hungry beasts." He reached for the cookie. "It's mine," I hissed. "Keep away from it." Try to make me. Frank leaped for the cookie, and I leaped for Frank. I landed on his back and pounded him with my fists. We rolled around the cold alley, kicking and hitting, snarling at each other like wild animals. Finally, I got my arm around his neck. I began to squeeze. "No," I thought. "Frank's your best friend," but I couldn't stop. I squeezed tighter. Then I saw a small, shadowy figure in the alley. A small figure with 4 legs and pointy ears, grey fur and a long tail. Scout, my cat. She sat down and meowed at me. I let go of Frank and dropped to my knees. I held out a hairy hand. "Here, Scout, Scout," I whispered. "Come to Charlie." Scout's golden eyes narrowed to slits. She flattened her ears and whipped her tail back and forth. "Come on, Scout," I urged. Scout arched her back and hissed. Then she growled low in her throat. She doesn't trust me, I thought. She thinks I'm after her. And she's right. I've had Scout since she was a 10-week-old ball of fur. She sleeps on my bed. She purrs in my ear to wake me up. She rubs against my legs when I come home from school. I love her, and now I wanted to eat her. Scout snarled again. "She's going to run," Frank yelled. He dived for her. Scout raked her claws at his face. Hissing and spitting, she leaped over my shoulder and bounded down the alley. "Get her, Charlie," Frank yelled. He started to run, but I grabbed him and spun him around. "No, Frank," I cried. "But I'm starving," he moaned. "Charlie, I ate a slug. I liked it. And I want more." "I ate raw eggs and a worm," I told him, "and we almost ate my cat. Frank, we have to do something." "I know, but what?" "The booklet," I cried. "Maybe there's some kind of cure in it." Frank pulled the booklet from his pocket. His hairy hands shook as he flipped through the pages. "Willow branch soup, orris root casserole," he muttered. "Charlie, you were right, remedies and cures, and here's one for the pumpkin juice. Milk, sugar, egg, cinnamon, nutmeg." Uh-oh. "What?" I asked. "What's wrong?" "We need pumpkin flesh from the same pumpkin." I almost panicked, but then I remembered. We left plenty of it in the kitchen. "Frank, come on, let's go." I grabbed a cookie. Frank snatched up all the chocolate. We wolfed them down and raced back to my house. We burst through the door and into the kitchen. "Oh no," I cried. The place was spotless. Clean counters, empty table, sparkling blender, no slimy pumpkin guts anywhere. "Gotta eat," Frank whimpered. He dropped to his knees in front of Scout's bowl and slurped up her cat food. I dug through the garbage can and found some mouldy bread. "Is that you, Charlie?" my mum called down from upstairs. Yeah, Mum, and Frank's with me too." I found the empty cat food can and began to lick it. "Mum, what happened to all the stuff we left in the kitchen?" "You mean that mess?" "I cleaned it up," she called down, "which is what you should have done." Frank whimpered again and raced to the refrigerator. "Mum," I hollered, "what about the pumpkin? The flesh, I mean." "Yeah, flesh," Frank muttered. He pulled out a package of raw hamburger meat. "I baked a pie," Mum yelled. "It's in the oven." I ran to the stove, pulled open the door. A pumpkin pie sat on the rack. She cooked our pumpkin, Frank, I moaned. What are we going to do? We'll eat this instead. Frank ripped at the plastic wrap on the hamburger. Yeah, but wait a second, Mum, I shouted. What's in the pie? The usual stuff, Charlie. Milk, sugar, eggs, nutmeg, and, cinnamon. Yes, we're saved, Frank. I knocked the hamburger out of his hands. I shoved a hot piece of pumpkin pie into his mouth. Eat this. Frank gulped and swallowed. I grabbed a piece and gobbled it down. We ate non-stop until the pie disappeared. I'm stuffed, Frank groaned. Then he stared at me. Charlie, did you hear what I said? I'm stuffed. I'm not hungry anymore. I nodded as I licked my fingers, my unhairy fingers. I felt my cheeks. No more hair. I stared at Frank's face. Your hair is gone too, I told him. We're cured. We're not beasts anymore. Footsteps pounded down the stairs and my mum entered the kitchen. She stared at the clean plate and laughed. Well, I see you found the pie. Yeah, it was great, Mum. Fantastic, Frank agreed. I'll have to make you another one soon. By the way, she added, you know that juice you left in the blender? What about it? I asked. It was delicious. Mum stared at the package of hamburger on the floor. Her eyes gleamed. She grabbed up the meat and raised it to her mouth. That juice was delicious, she said, but boy, am I hungry. Just kidding, guys. It's just me. Hey, look, if you are after more chills, thrills, and... Did I mention chills? Please subscribe to the Leftovers channel. I'll be doing a whole bunch more super spooky material, especially the Goosebumps book reading. I've tracked down every single one of those 10 tales to give you goosebumps, and I will be reading each story. So subscribe, hit that little bell icon so you can keep getting notified. You know how the system works. And yeah, tune in next time for some more Leftovers from the Leftover Culture Review.